You see her across the room. The ink catches your eye. Maybe it's a rose on her shoulder. Maybe it's something bold across her back. Whatever it is, it grabs your attention instantly. She feels different. She feels wild. And in that moment, your pulse quickens because you know she's not like the others. That's the hook for most men. Tattoos look sexy, dangerous, rebellious, and we tell ourselves that means exciting. And in the beginning, she makes you feel alive, like you're stepping into a story you've never lived before. But here's the part no one tells you. The same energy that draws you in is often the same energy that tears you apart. Studies keep pointing to the same patterns. Women with tattoos are more likely to chase attention, make impulsive decisions, resist commitment, and bring more drama into their relationships. Not every woman, not every tattoo, but the signals are there. And ignoring those signals is how men end up blindsided, stuck in chaos they never saw coming. This video isn't about shaming anyone. It's about giving you the tools to see clearly, to separate short-term excitement from long-term peace, because attraction without discipline is a trap. But when you add awareness, you protect yourself and you stay in control. Let's get into it. Number 1. The impulsive fire that burns stability. One of the strongest signals behind visible tattoos is impulsivity. That fire she carries, the one that first grabs your attention, often comes from a pattern of acting fast without thinking through the cost. And at first, that can feel exciting. It feels like passion. It feels like spontaneity. But what's exciting in the moment can turn into chaos over time. Most studies agree on this point. People who lean toward tattoos tend to score higher on impulsivity measures. They crave stimulation. They take risks quickly. They follow urges before weighing the long-term consequences. And that behavior doesn't stop with the ink on their skin. It often bleeds into spending habits, career moves, emotional reactions, and yes, romantic decisions. Take Richard, 48, from Texas. He met Amanda, 44, at a local music festival. She had striking tattoos across her arms and a bold energy that lit up every conversation. On their first dates, she suggested road trips on a whim, expensive dinners, late nights that stretched into mornings. Richard loved the rush. He hadn't felt that alive in years. But after a few months, he started to notice the flip side. Bills piled up, plans constantly shifted, arguments sparked over small things because Amanda would react instantly instead of cooling down. What once felt like passion started to feel like instability. This is the double edge of impulsivity. It creates excitement, but it kills predictability. And long-term relationships demand some level of predictability. You can't build trust on quicksand. If you're always guessing what tomorrow will look like, you're not building a partnership, you're living in survival mode. Now, I'm not saying every woman with tattoos lives this way. Some have mastered self-control, some wear ink purely as art, and some are deeply grounded. But studies keep pointing out the correlation, enough that you can't ignore it. Tattoos can act as a signal of thrill-seeking, and thrill-seeking doesn't always mix well with long-term stability. Here's why this matters to you. If you're a man in your 40 seconds or 50 seconds, chances are you've already been through some chaos. Maybe you've been divorced. Maybe you've had relationships that burned out fast. At this stage, you're not just looking for heat, you're looking for peace. You want fire, yes, but you also want a fire that warms your home, not one that burns it down. The Stoics would put it this way. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. If you're dating a woman who hasn't mastered her impulses, you're stepping into a life where her moods and decisions drive your stability. And that's not freedom, that's captivity disguised as passion. The hard question you need to ask is this: does her fire add to your life, or does it drain it? Does she spark energy that inspires you, or does she create chaos that exhausts you? Passion without discipline doesn't build, it destroys. So here's the filter. Pay attention not just to the tattoos, but to the patterns behind them. Watch how she spends money. Watch how she reacts in conflict. Watch how she handles temptation. The ink might be art, but the behavior tells the real story. If you've ever felt the sting of chasing excitement that later turned into instability, type this in the comments. I choose peace. And remember, impulsivity is only the first signal, because behind many tattoos, there's also a deeper story about pain, trauma, and the scars that ink tries to cover. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Number 2. Scars beneath the ink you can't ignore. Tattoos don't just decorate the skin. For many people, they cover something deeper. Behind the art, there can be scars, emotional, psychological, sometimes even physical, that the ink is trying to transform. And as a man thinking about long-term stability, you can't afford to ignore what that really means. Research has found consistent links between tattoos and higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even self-harming behaviors. Now, this doesn't mean every tattooed woman carries those struggles, but it does mean tattoos often serve as markers of a story underneath a story that might still be unresolved. When you step into a relationship, you're not just stepping into her beauty, you're stepping into her history. Think about what a tattoo really represents for some people. It can be a memory of pain, a symbol of survival, a rebellion against something they couldn't control. The ink becomes armor. It hides, but it also broadcasts. She may not talk about it, but the scars beneath are speaking all the same. And when those scars haven't been healed, they can show up in ways you don't expect: mood swings, emotional walls, or a tendency to repeat cycles of self-sabotage. Here's the challenge. As men, we often feel the urge to fix what's broken. We see pain, and we want to be the solution. But the Stoics warned against this illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." You cannot heal another person's past for them. You cannot erase scars with love alone. If she hasn't done the work to face her own trauma, that burden will spill into your life, no matter how much strength you try to carry for both of you. What makes this even more complicated is that scars can make her magnetic. Pain often breeds intensity. She may feel deeper, love harder, crave closeness more desperately. That intensity can sweep you off your feet, but if it's fueled by unresolved trauma, it won't stay passion, it will morph into chaos. The very thing that draws you in will eventually test your sanity. This doesn't mean you should dismiss every tattooed woman outright, but it does mean you should pay attention. When the ink tells a story, don't just admire the art. Ask yourself what it's really saying. Does it represent growth, healing, a past she has mastered? Or does it represent a wound she still carries, bleeding into the present? Seneca once said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." If she is still suffering from scars that were never faced, you will be pulled into pain that isn't yours to carry. And carrying someone else's unhealed wounds will eventually crush your peace. The bottom line is this: tattoos can be a map. They might guide you toward a woman who has depth, resilience, and wisdom from her struggles, or they might point toward unresolved scars that become your problem the moment you commit. The key is not to be blinded by the beauty of the ink. Look deeper, because scars beneath the ink will shape the future more than the ink itself. If you've ever felt the weight of someone else's unhealed pain spilling into your life, type this in the comments. I protect peace. And remember, not every tattoo signals trauma, but when you see patterns of craving attention that never stop, that's when you know you're stepping into another kind of risk. And that's exactly where we're going next. Number 3, attention hunger that never ends. Let's be honest, attention is addictive. Tattoos are often chosen not just for personal meaning, but because they get noticed. And when a woman carries bold, visible ink, she knows it will spark conversations, draw eyes, and make her stand out. At first, that confidence feels magnetic. But here's the catch. If her identity depends on being noticed, you'll be competing with the world for her focus. Studies have linked tattoos with higher tendencies toward attention-seeking behavior. Again, not every tattooed woman falls into this pattern, but enough do that it becomes a signal worth paying attention to. The ink becomes a tool for validation, a way to say, look at me, notice me, affirm me. And once that hunger sets in, it rarely fades. Consider Michael, 52, from Denver. He met Lisa, 47, at a friend's backyard party. She had a colorful sleeve tattoo, a lively personality, and she loved being the center of conversation. At first, Michael found it charming. He felt proud standing next to her because people noticed them. But over time, he started to see the cracks. Lisa would constantly post pictures online, fishing for likes and comments. She'd get frustrated if he didn't compliment her daily. She needed validation like oxygen, and no matter how much Michael gave, it was never enough. This is the trap of attention hunger. It can't be satisfied. Validation works like a drug. The high wears off quickly, and she needs another hit. That could mean endless selfies, constant social media updates, or even flirting with strangers just to prove she's still desirable. For a man seeking peace and stability, this isn't just exhausting, it's destructive. Here's the deeper psychology. Attention hunger comes from an internal emptiness. Instead of feeling secure within, she seeks to fill that void from without. But no partner can ever fill someone else's emptiness. The Stoics warned about this centuries ago. Epictetus said, "He who seeks approval of others puts himself in their control." A woman addicted to attention is enslaved to it, whether she admits it or not. And if you attach yourself to her, you'll be dragged along for the ride. Now, let's talk about the reality for men in midlife. By 40 or 50, you've probably worked hard to build a steady life. You're not chasing applause anymore. You want respect, intimacy, and trust. But when you date a woman whose life revolves around external validation, your relationship becomes a performance stage. She's chasing the crowd's approval while you're left backstage, wondering if you'll ever be enough. And here's the harsh truth. Attention hunger rarely gets better with time. If anything, it intensifies as she ages and fears losing relevance. The tattoos that once made her stand out now need to be paired with louder outfits, bolder behaviors, and riskier choices. The cycle deepens. Michael eventually realized that no matter how much love he gave Lisa, she was chasing something bigger than him, an endless spotlight. And he had to make a choice. Keep feeding her hunger until it drained him dry, or walk away and protect his peace. So here's the filter. When you meet a woman with tattoos, ask yourself, does she carry them quietly as part of her story, or does she constantly use them to demand attention? Because if it's the second, you're stepping into a contest you can never win. If you've ever felt the exhaustion of competing with the world for someone's attention, type this in the comments. I value peace. And remember, attention hunger is only one layer. Beneath it, there's often a craving for novelty, for thrill, for passion without limits. And that's exactly what we'll look at next. Number 4. Passion without limits that drains loyalty. At first glance, passion feels like the ultimate prize. She's bold, adventurous, willing to take risks, and makes you feel like the most alive man in the room. But there's a hidden danger in passion without limits. It rarely knows how to stay loyal. What feels like fire today can become ashes tomorrow when her craving for novelty outweighs her ability to commit. Studies have shown that people with visible tattoos often score higher in sensation-seeking behaviors. They're drawn to what's new, intense, and thrilling. That can show up as adventurous hobbies, wild nights, or risk-taking in everyday life. But it can also bleed into relationships. Passion, when unchecked, looks for its next fix, and if you can't constantly feed it, she'll look elsewhere. Here's the brutal truth. Unlimited passion isn't sustainable. It drains stability because it requires constant stimulation. The rush of the beginning fades, and once it does, a woman wired for novelty may chase that excitement in new people, new experiences, or new attention. What started as electrifying intimacy can turn into infidelity, emotional detachment, or restless dissatisfaction. Think about how that plays out. In the early months, you're swept away by the intensity. She calls you late at night, wants spontaneous trips, craves intimacy at every turn. You feel wanted. But then, slowly, you notice her attention slipping. The same things that once thrilled her no longer satisfy. She needs more excitement, more drama, more novelty. And if you can't provide it, she'll seek it elsewhere, sometimes without even realizing the damage it causes. The Stoics warned against this kind of unrestrained desire. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." A person constantly chasing new experiences spreads themselves too thin to build anything lasting. Passion without boundaries isn't strength, it's weakness disguised as fire. And for a man looking for peace, that weakness will cost you dearly. Now, some men convince themselves they can handle it. They think, I'll be the one to keep her satisfied, I'll match her energy, I'll keep things exciting forever. But no man can outpace insatiability. The more you give, the more she craves, and eventually you burn out. The truth is, loyalty and stability require delayed gratification, the ability to sit in routine, to value consistency, to embrace depth over novelty. Without that, a relationship is doomed to collapse under the weight of unmet desires. This doesn't mean passion is bad. Controlled passion, guided by discipline, can build an incredible bond. But uncontrolled passion, the kind that refuses boundaries, will always threaten loyalty. It's like a flame with no container. Instead of warming the home, it burns it down. So when you meet a woman whose tattoos signal intensity, ask yourself, is this passion anchored, or is it untamed? Does she know how to channel desire into devotion, or does she constantly chase the next thrill? Because if it's the latter, her loyalty will be as temporary as her excitement. The Stoic path reminds us to seek what endures. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." But freedom doesn't come from being enslaved to desire. It comes from mastering it. And the woman who hasn't mastered her passions will never master loyalty. So here's the filter. Passion is attractive, but peace is priceless. If you want a relationship that lasts, don't just ask if she excites you. Ask if she can stay when excitement fades. If you've ever seen passion burn bright but vanish when loyalty was tested, type this in the comments. I choose depth. And remember, passion is only one signal. Another danger comes when conflict itself becomes addictive, turning love into a battlefield. And that's where we're heading next. Number 5. When conflict feels like foreplay. For some women, arguments aren't just disagreements, they're fuel. They thrive on confrontation. They turn every small spark into a wildfire, and before you know it, conflict becomes part of the intimacy. At first, this might feel intense. It might even feel exciting, like you're in some passionate movie scene. But living inside constant tension is not passion, it's slow destruction. Studies suggest that people with visible tattoos are more likely to display aggressive traits or confrontational behaviors. Again, this doesn't apply to everyone, but it shows up enough that you can't ignore it. The ink often signals a personality that doesn't back down, doesn't compromise easily, and sometimes even enjoys the clash. And if you've ever dated someone like this, you know the cycle. A fight, followed by heated reconciliation, then another fight. It becomes an addictive loop. Let's make this real. Thomas, 51, from Arizona, met Rachel, 46, at a friend's dinner gathering. She was outspoken, magnetic, and had several visible tattoos that caught his attention. Their chemistry was undeniable. In the first few weeks, their conversations were sharp, flirty, and playful, but also edged with tension. Thomas thought, "She's fiery, that's just her personality." But over time, he realized every disagreement escalated fast. A small comment about being late turned into a full-blown argument. A minor difference in opinion became a test of loyalty. Rachel thrived on the sparks, but Thomas started to feel drained. What once felt like passion started to feel like walking on glass. Here's the danger. When conflict feels like foreplay, drama becomes the foundation of the relationship, and drama is not sustainable. Arguments don't build trust, they erode it. Over time, the highs get shorter, the lows get deeper, and the whole relationship starts to revolve around managing tension instead of building peace. From a Stoic perspective, this is the exact opposite of what makes life meaningful. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." True strength is measured by peace, not by constant battle. A woman who thrives on conflict may confuse chaos with passion, but what she's really doing is robbing you of stability. The hard part is this: the cycle can be intoxicating. The fights make the makeups feel more intense. The drama keeps your emotions running high. But just because something feels powerful doesn't mean it's healthy. That rush is no different from a drug it hooks you in while it eats away at your foundation. For men in midlife, this is especially dangerous. You've worked too hard, built too much, and lived through enough storms to waste your peace on someone who can't tell the difference between love and war. You're not looking for a sparring partner, you're looking for a partner. So here's your filter. Ask yourself, does she know how to handle disagreement with calm, or does she light the match every chance she gets? Does conflict become a tool for growth, or just a way to stir up energy? If it's the second, you're not in a relationship, you're in a boxing ring. And the longer you stay, the more it drains your strength. Thomas eventually realized this. Rachel wasn't interested in solving problems, she was addicted to the fire itself. And he had to make a choice: stay in the loop or step out for good. If you've ever lived through a cycle where conflict felt like passion but left you empty, type this in the comments. I choose calm. And keep watching, because if conflict can feel like foreplay, rebellion can feel like freedom. But when rebellion collides with commitment, the cost can be even higher. And that's where we're going next. Number 6. Rebellion that resists commitment. Tattoos have always carried a symbol of rebellion. They signal defiance, a refusal to conform, a willingness to stand against the norm. That's part of what makes them attractive. Rebellion feels bold. It feels fearless. It feels sexy. But here's the hard truth. The same spirit of rebellion that draws you in can also be the very thing that keeps her from ever committing fully. Studies point out that women with tattoos often display stronger tendencies toward nonconformity. They resist rules, resist structure, and resist expectations. At first, this can be intoxicating. She feels free, unshackled, and exciting to be around. But when it comes time to build something steady, a relationship, a family, a future, that rebellious streak doesn't just vanish. It pushes back against the very commitment you need to feel secure. Think about how that shows up. Maybe she avoids defining the relationship. Maybe she pushes against shared routines. Maybe she even frames commitment itself as boring or restrictive. What she calls freedom, you might experience as instability. And over time, the constant resistance starts to feel less like independence and more like sabotage. The Stoics would warn us about chasing someone whose values are at war with our own. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the right to live as we wish, nothing else." But here's the key: freedom is not the same as rebellion. True freedom comes from mastering yourself, not from rejecting every boundary. If she equates commitment with chains, she's confusing loyalty with loss, and that confusion will eventually cost you. Here's where many men get trapped. In the early days, rebellion feels magnetic. She challenges you, she shakes up your patterns, she makes life feel adventurous. But as months turn into years, rebellion without purpose erodes trust. She may not cheat, but she keeps one foot out the door. She may not leave, but she won't settle. And living in that constant uncertainty is exhausting. Commitment doesn't mean the death of freedom. A healthy relationship creates structure that supports both people, a rhythm that allows love to grow without chaos. But a rebellious spirit that refuses structure is like trying to build a house on shifting sand. No matter how strong the foundation, it keeps collapsing because the ground won't stay still. The truth is, some women use rebellion as identity. The tattoos are part of that performance, a statement that says, "I won't be tamed." And if you try to build something steady with her, you'll always be fighting against that statement. The more you push for security, the more she pushes back for freedom. That dynamic doesn't build, it breaks. So here's your filter. Pay attention to how she talks about relationships, routines, and rules. Does she see commitment as a strength or as a cage? Does she value stability or does she constantly seek escape? Because rebellion may be exciting in the short term, but in the long term, it resists the very thing that holds a relationship together. The Stoic path is clear. Discipline is freedom. Rebellion without purpose is slavery. If she hasn't learned the difference, her rebellion won't inspire you, it will drain you. If you've ever been with someone who treated commitment as a cage instead of a choice, type this in the comments. I value loyalty. And keep watching, because rebellion is one form of resistance. But sometimes the struggle shows up later, when regret starts to creep in and change the way she sees both herself and you. And that's what we'll uncover next. Number 7. Regret written on her skin and on you. Tattoos often begin as bold statements. A night of passion, a symbol of freedom, a reminder of survival. But time has a way of changing how we see our choices. What once felt like art can start to feel like a mistake. And here's the problem. Regret doesn't stay locked in the past. It seeps into the present, shaping how she sees herself and how she treats you. Studies have shown that many people who get tattoos eventually report regret, especially when the decision was impulsive. For women, that regret can translate into deeper insecurities. She may feel stuck with a reminder of a version of herself she no longer wants to be, and that frustration doesn't always get directed at the tattoo. Sometimes it gets directed at the people closest to her. That means you. Let's bring this into real life. John, 56, from Florida, started dating Melissa, 49. She had several tattoos, including one from her early 20s that she admitted she hated. At first, it seemed like a small thing, just a piece of ink she covered with clothes. But as their relationship grew, John noticed Melissa's mood change whenever the topic of the past came up. She'd get defensive, irritable, and even project her frustration onto him. "You don't know what it's like to live with mistakes you can't erase," she once snapped. What began as her private regret slowly became a weight on their relationship. This is the trap with regret. It doesn't stay personal. When someone feels disappointed in their own choices, that energy often spills outward. She might second-guess her relationship, question her commitment, or even push blame onto you when she's really angry at herself. Over time, you're not just dealing with the woman in front of you, you're dealing with the ghosts of her past. The Stoics were clear on this. We cannot change the past, only our perception of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, when you do not refer your thoughts to some object of common utility." The wisdom here is simple. Carry your mistakes, but don't let them define you. The problem is, if she hasn't learned that discipline, you'll end up carrying the weight with her. And that burden can poison the relationship. For men in midlife, this risk is especially costly. You've likely made your own share of mistakes, but you've also learned the value of moving forward. You want a partner who has done the same. But if she is still trapped in cycles of regret, those cycles will pull you back into her past. and you'll find yourself paying for choices you never made. Here's the filter. Regret is natural, but how someone handles it tells you everything. Does she own her past with acceptance, or does she let it bleed into her present? Does she wear her tattoos as stories of growth, or as scars she can't forgive? If it's the second, regret won't just be written on her skin, it will be written on your relationship. John eventually realized this truth. Melissa wasn't angry at him, but he became the target of her self-disappointment, and that weight wore him down. He had to ask himself the hard question, am I in love with her, or am I stuck in her regret? If you've ever carried the weight of someone else's mistakes as if they were your own, type this in the comments. I move forward. And remember, regret is heavy. But even heavier is what happens when regret evolves into resentment about the future, when commitment itself starts to collapse. That's exactly what we'll explore next. Number 8. Why novelty today can mean divorce tomorrow. Novelty feels intoxicating. The rush of something new, the thrill of the unexpected, the sense that life will never be boring again. Many tattooed women are drawn to this energy. It's part of what makes them magnetic, an openness to adventure, risk, and experiences others might shy away from. But here's the hidden cost. The same craving for novelty that excites you today can be the very reason loyalty collapses tomorrow. Research consistently links tattoos with sensation-seeking personalities. These are people who look for stimulation, chase intensity, and resist routine. In a dating phase, this feels like gold. She's the woman who keeps things fresh, surprises you, and makes your world bigger. But in marriage or any long-term commitment, those same traits can become cracks in the foundation. Because what she calls excitement often conflicts with the patience, sacrifice, and repetition that real commitment demands. Here's the truth most men don't want to admit. Every long-term relationship eventually shifts from fireworks to firewood. Passion becomes routine, desire softens into partnership, and the thrill of novelty gives way to the calm of stability. That's not failure, it's the natural progression of love. But for a woman addicted to novelty, that transition feels unbearable. Instead of seeing stability as comfort, she sees it as death. Instead of embracing commitment as growth, she frames it as loss. The Stoics warned us about this temptation. Seneca wrote, "An unlimited desire is a form of poverty." When someone is enslaved to novelty, they are never satisfied. They may enjoy passion in the moment, but the hunger for more leaves them empty again. And when emptiness shows up inside a marriage, divorce often follows. You've likely seen this pattern around you. Couples who started hot and heavy, full of energy, only to end up torn apart because one partner couldn't sit still when things got calm. And statistics back it up. Studies show higher divorce rates among those who display sensation-seeking behaviors, including those who wear bold, visible tattoos. It doesn't mean every relationship ends this way, but it raises the risk enough that you can't ignore it. The danger for men is this. You think you can keep the novelty alive forever. You convince yourself that if you keep planning trips, trying new things, or keeping her excited, she'll stay satisfied. But no man can compete with an endless appetite for new. Eventually, the cycle outpaces your energy. And when that happens, she looks for novelty elsewhere, sometimes in new experiences, sometimes in new people. What begins as thrilling becomes destructive. The same passion that made you feel alive in the beginning becomes the force that tears the relationship apart in the end. That's why novelty today can mean divorce tomorrow. So what's the filter? Ask yourself, does she have the ability to appreciate stillness, to find joy in routine, to value depth over constant excitement? Or does she constantly talk about needing more, chasing more, craving more? Because a woman who can't sit with peace will never stay at peace with you. The Stoic way is to desire less, not more. Epictetus reminded us, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Apply that to relationships, and you see the wisdom. True loyalty comes not from constant novelty, but from mastering desire. If you've ever seen a relationship collapse because the hunger for excitement drowned out loyalty, type this in the comments. I value stability. And keep watching, because novelty might lead to divorce, but for some women, even divorce isn't the end of the storm. It's just the beginning of another cycle of drama, and that's exactly what we'll uncover next. Number 9. Addicted to drama, starving for peace. Some women don't just experience drama, they feed on it. It becomes their oxygen, their default state, their way of keeping relationships alive. And while that chaos may feel exciting in the beginning, over time it turns into a slow poison. Drama might keep her heart racing, but it leaves yours exhausted. Research has shown that individuals with tattoos often score higher on traits tied to risk-taking, sensation-seeking, and even aggression. For some women, that translates into emotional volatility, conflict, jealousy, sudden mood swings, and cycles of intense highs followed by crushing lows. And here's the kicker. Once drama becomes her comfort zone, peace feels foreign. She doesn't know how to live without it. Let's put this in a real-world picture. David, 54, from Chicago, thought he struck gold when he met Karen, 50, at a charity event. She had striking tattoos, a sharp sense of humor, and a passion that made him feel young again. In the first months, everything was thrilling. Arguments ended with laughter, fights ended with intimacy, and the roller coaster felt like proof of how much they cared. But as the relationship stretched into a year, David realized something dark. The fights never stopped. Karen seemed to create conflict out of thin air. If things were calm for too long, she'd pick at something small until sparks flew. For her, peace felt boring. For David, it felt like he was slowly drowning. This is the danger of being addicted to drama. It disguises itself as passion, but it's really instability. She may tell you, if we didn't fight, it would mean we don't care. But that's a lie. Healthy love doesn't need chaos to prove itself. Real intimacy grows in calm, not in constant storms. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A woman addicted to drama has not learned this truth. Instead of mastering her mind, she lets outside events, or worse, creates them dictate her emotions. And if you're with her, you get pulled into the storm. Here's why this hits men in their 40 seconds and 50 seconds especially hard. By now, you've likely lived through your share of storms. You've seen how chaos destroys careers, families, and health. At this stage, you crave peace more than constant adrenaline. But if you end up with someone addicted to drama, that peace will always be just out of reach. She'll keep pulling you back into battles you didn't choose, until you realize you've traded stability for chaos. And here's the cruel irony. Women addicted to drama are usually starving for peace. Deep down, they want stability. But because peace feels uncomfortable, they sabotage it. They stir the pot, break the silence, and turn calm into conflict. You can't fix that. You can only decide whether to live inside that cycle or step out of it. So here's the filter. When you see a woman who thrives on drama, don't mistake it for passion. Ask yourself, does she find joy in peace, or does she look restless when things are calm? If it's the second, her drama will drain you until there's nothing left. David eventually walked away. He realized no amount of love could make Karen stop needing the storm. And once he chose peace, he never looked back. If you've ever felt trapped in a cycle where calm was destroyed by someone else's addiction to conflict, type this in the comments. I choose peace. And stay with me, because if drama can feel addictive, the final danger goes even deeper. It's when silence itself becomes a weapon of control, turning desire into captivity. And that's exactly where we're going next. Number 10. Choosing calm over chaos, the Stoic filter. At the end of the day, this conversation isn't really about tattoos. Tattoos are just signals. They're surface-level expressions of deeper patterns, impulsivity, rebellion, craving for attention, a thirst for novelty. What really matters is whether you, as a man, have the discipline to see through the surface and filter what belongs in your life and what doesn't. Every man knows what it's like to be pulled in by beauty, by charm, by that rush of passion that makes your blood run hot. But here's the truth. Attraction without discipline will lead you into chaos, and chaos will always cost you more than it gives. The Stoics taught this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Calm is not weakness, calm is power. Calm is the ability to stand still when the world screams for reaction. It's the ability to see past the surface and recognize the patterns that will shape your future." Now think about what that means in relationships. A woman who thrives on attention, conflict, or drama might feel magnetic at first. But ask yourself, 5 years from now, will this energy still feel exciting, or will it leave you exhausted? 10 years from now, will her need for novelty make your bond stronger, or will it push her to seek excitement elsewhere? The Stoic filter is simple but ruthless. It asks one question: does this choice move me closer to peace or deeper into chaos? When you apply that filter to dating, everything becomes clearer. The tattoos don't matter nearly as much as the habits, the choices, and the mindset behind them. And here's where many men fail. They believe they can handle the chaos. They convince themselves that their love, their resources, their patience will be enough to tame the storm. But storms don't get tamed. They pass through, they tear things down, and they leave scars in their wake. The only real choice is whether you stand in their path or step aside and protect your peace. The key is not to demonize women with tattoos, but to see the bigger picture. For some, the ink tells a story of growth, resilience, and healing. For others, it signals unresolved pain, rebellion, or patterns that will bring instability into your life. Your job is not to judge, it's to discern, to recognize the difference between fire that warms your home and fire that burns it down. This is where your age becomes your advantage. In your 30s, 40s, or 50s, you've lived long enough to know what chaos feels like. You've seen what it costs. You've felt the drain. At this point, you don't need another storm. You need stability, loyalty, and depth. You need a partner who adds to your strength, not one who constantly tests it. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." You've already had your trials. The question now is, will you let them perfect you, or will you keep repeating the same patterns until it's too late? Choosing calm over chaos is not about settling, it's about elevating. It's about understanding that a relationship should give you more energy than it takes. It should help you grow, not shrink. It should protect your mind, not torment it. So here's the takeaway. Let tattoos be what they are: art, expression, a glimpse into personality. But don't stop there. Look deeper. Apply the Stoic filter. If the patterns you see promise chaos, walk away. If they promise peace, lean in. Because in the end, the greatest power you have as a man is the power to choose. And the man who chooses peace chooses strength. The man who chooses calm chooses freedom. The man who learns to filter wisely doesn't just survive, he thrives. So now you see the bigger picture. Tattoos are never just ink on the skin, they're signals. Signals of impulsivity, rebellion, hunger for attention, a craving for novelty, or even scars of regret. Not every woman with tattoos will carry all of these patterns, but enough do that you can't afford to ignore the risks. The real lesson here isn't to judge, it's to discern, to look beyond beauty, beyond passion, beyond the rush of attraction, and ask yourself, does this choice bring me peace or chaos? That's the Stoic filter. That's the standard every man should carry if he wants a life of strength and stability. If you found value in this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss the daily insights we bring about Stoicism, psychology, and the reality of relationships. Thank you for watching, thank you for your time, and I'll see you again tomorrow.